Greetings, everyone. I believe and hope that you're all doing well. I see we are quite a handful. We have a lot to cover today, and so we'll just begin regardless of the amount of students in class. Tomorrow we'll begin our class at exactly 8 at exactly 8 p.m. So kindly make it early. Make it here early so that we don't spend much time. So I believe that you're all doing well. Yesterday we were somewhere in Kabarak in a medical camp. We couldn't join the meeting, lakini natumai kila kitu ilikuwa sawa. I've received assignments from a few of you. I'm yet to pick the ones that were collected yesterday, and I'm just to go through them and see some of the things that you guys wrote. So probably one of us can kindly say hi, and I'm just give a comment on how yesterday's meeting was. Gashon, you can say hi.
Hi.
Hello. Hi. Hi.
So someone is saying why.
Hi.
Well, that's great. It means that my voice is loud and clear. So according to our timetable, thank you everyone for responding. According to our timetable, which I believe you all have an access to, today we are to cover something on the cardiovascular system, if I'm not wrong. Let me just get there. I think we were to cover the cardiovascular system last week. Just give me a moment. And by the way, today's class is being recorded. You'll find it live on our YouTube channel. Can somebody kindly brief us on yesterday's meeting? How was it? What did you people discuss?
We discussed PCOS.
You guys want to order some more money? Great. So, according to our timetable, we are a little bit behind. There's a system that we've not covered. That's the muscle and the skeletal system. That's where we talk about arthritis, stuff like gout, osteoporosis, and other classes of joint pain. We ought to cover that before September. And last week we were to actually cover hypertension, the cardiovascular system, and just to do a brief introduction to Health Expo. And then continue with our study on the cardiovascular system this week. Today being Monday 4th, I believe. So we'll do an introduction to the cardiovascular system. That's what we were supposed to do on Monday last week on 28th, but we'll do it today. So there's no cause of alarm. We'll study each and every topic in our timetable, and we'll finish in good time. So today I'll have the privilege of taking us through the circulatory system. The circulatory system comprises of two particular body systems. That's the cardiovascular system and the lymphatic system. These are systems that we've talked about in passing when mentioning diseases in different systems. When talking about different systems, we've mentioned them in one way or the other. And I believe we have a rough idea of what this particular system entails. Circulatory is just flow or movement. You can think of water inside a tube. Let's believe and pray as we begin. We thank you, Father, for enabling us to once more meet and discuss matters health. As we learn these important things, may you help us understand. May you widen our understanding and broaden, Lord, our knowledge in these simple and important things for life is my prayer, trusting and believing in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 So just be keen today. Today I'll be very fast, but in my speech, but I promise not to leave anybody behind. So as I have said, the cardiovascular system is comprises of two particular body systems. Those are the circulatory system consists of two particular systems in your body. That's the cardiovascular system and the lymphatic system. These systems are generally responsible for flow of fluids in our body, or the movement of fluids in our body. As I said, think of water inside some pump. And so in the cardiovascular system, as we have said time and again, the cardiovascular system comprises of three major things. Though that's your heart, and at times the heart is called cardiac muscle. And so we have the heart as one of the components in the cardiovascular system. And then secondly, we have blood vessels in the cardiovascular system. And then thirdly, we have the blood itself as part of the cardiovascular system. And majorly, people refer to the heart as the most basic function of the heart. Yenye kila mtu anajua. They normally say the heart pumps blood. The heart pumps blood. Yeah, the heart pumps blood, and I believe that we've all seen the heart. If you've not seen the physical heart, the real heart, you've probably seen a drawing. I believe that you've all seen a diagram of the heart. And as I have said, the basic function of the heart is to beat. It beats. That's what people normally associate the heart with. And by the fact that the heart beats, it pumps blood. When it beats, it pumps blood, or rather it generates a force that moves blood within the blood vessels. So the heart is more or less just like a pump that pumps water to a given channel where it is essentially just needed. So that's what the cardiovascular system is. Today we'll focus on the blood and talk about anemia, and then probably tomorrow we'll talk about the heart and some of the conditions of the heart. And hopefully on Friday we'll talk about the blood vessels and the conditions of the blood vessels. vitu kama varicose vein. So the other component is the lymphatic system. We ought to cover it on Thursday as well. I hope time will allow. So the lymphatic system essentially contains organs, things like the thymus gland, things like tonsils. I believe you all know what tonsils are. As parents, you definitely know what tonsils are. There's an infection that normally that affects that particular organ, causing tonsillitis, and it's normally very common in children. So we have lymph nodes, we have lymphoid organs. Those are just the organs kama tonsils. And then we have the lymphatic vessels. The lymphatic vessels are more or less just pipes through which the lymph fluid is just like blood. So in the cardiovascular system, the fluid we have is blood. In the lymphatic system, the fluid that we have is the lymphatic fluid, ama lymph. It's either the lymph ama the lymphatic fluid. So as I have said, in the cardiovascular system, majorly, the function of the lymphatic system, we'll look at it briefly today. It cleans the body, inasafisha tu mwili, and it is responsible for immunity. The cardiovascular system also has blood, and in blood there are cells that are responsible for immunity. But we look at that. So we have the heart, we have the blood vessels, and then we have the blood itself. The outline of today's lecture will define a few terms, look at the basic structure of the heart and blood vessels. There are pictures that we look at here that has several structures, and they've been named. These particular pictures might look quite intimidating, but don't worry a lot about them. We are not teaching you guys to do some sort of surgery or stuff, so you really don't need to know everything that is contained in these pictures that I'm just about to show. They're just merely drawings. So we look at the basic functioning of the cardiovascular system, and as a student, you should know the function of the cardiovascular system. And then we look at the blood, its importance, composition, and how blood is actually formed. Alafu tutaangalia anemia. After looking at the health degrading practices for the blood and cardiovascular system. So that's essentially just what we look at in Genesis chapter 9 verse 4 and in Leviticus chapter 17 verse 11. We are told that blood is life. Blood is life. And what does that mean? Blood is life. Can somebody tell us what their thoughts are briefly? We have about 100 slides that we should go through today. Can somebody briefly tell us? Yes, go ahead.
I can say that blood is life due to the fact that it's the one that transports nutrients and minerals to the various parts of the body, plus oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
And again, far from the work of transportation of these basic nutrients that are required in various parts of the body, it also transfers oxygen to brain through red blood cells. Can say.
Interesting. Yeah, that's 100% true. So we'll proceed. This is the heart, and that is where it is located in your chest, in the chest cavity. We learn, ni mimi ndo nitawafundisha the gastrointestinal, nitawafundisha the digestive system. So when we'll be talking about the digestive system, tutaangalia something called the abdomen. And in the cardiovascular system, we look at the thorax or the chest cavity inaitwangwa thorax, and the chest cavity inakwanga enclosed within your ribs. That's how it looks like. And at times a patient can feel some sorts of pain in their chest. There are normally pains in the abdomen, and majorly patients wagonjwa wakisikia tumbo in the like any sort of pain in their abdomen, watasemanga tumbo inauma. So when we'll be talking about the digestive system, we'll know all these kinds of pain in the abdomen, and we'll be able to tell when someone is feeling pain in a particular area in their abdomen. We'll be able to tell probably what that particular pain might be linked to, the condition that pain might be linked to. So the heart is that's how it is. I believe tulikuwa tushapitia tukaona penye the heart is in one of our classes, and as you can I remember us touching trying to locate the sternum. I believe you still remember what the sternum is. The sternum is that horizontal. Is it horizontal? Horizontal linakwanga today my word is not working, so I might not be able to write.
Horizontal is across.
Approach.
And vertical?
Up, down.
Upright.
Yeah, so the sternum is vertically placed in the chest cavity, in the middle of our chest, that particular bone, inaitwa the sternum. So the heart just lies behind it, and not the whole heart is behind it. The heart is more or less oblique, niseme across, iko slanted across the chest cavity. There is part of it that is below that particular bone. Specifically, the heart inaanzia its top, the top of the heart inaitwangwa the base of the heart inaanzia that particular ridge yenye niliwaambia mjaribu kulocate that particular ridge. That's where the heart begins, all the way down to the fifth intercostal space where the apex is. I believe we saw all that in our class, the fifth intercostal space, na mnajua saizi fifth intercostal space ni nini, ama the first intercostal space, and all that. So the heart is, I'll ask about the position of the heart. Though today I'm not here to talk about the heart. Yeah, tutaongelea the heart kesho. It's in iko oblique in a way. You can iko oblique, slanted from the middle of the chest, and it is more to the left of the chest. And then the heart normally inatoshananga tu na just your thumb size, and it's heavier in males than female. In females, it's around to 50 grams. In males, the heart that's the weight of the heart is about 300 grams. And the more someone does exercise, the bigger, the heart becomes. The more you do exercise, the stronger your heart becomes, and the wider it gets. That's essentially how the heart is. And as I have said, the heart specifically is responsible to pump blood. That's the specific function of the heart. There are 4 major functions actually the heart. Number 1 is you could generate blood pressure, because when the blood pressure is generated, the blood is able to flow. The blood is pumped, like a force is produced that pumps blood throughout your body, throughout the body, to the cells, to the various cells that this particular blood is needed. So that's the first function of the heart, generates blood pressure. How does the heart generate blood pressure? By contracting. Contracting tulieleza inamaanisha nini? By contracting. Inafanya hivyo. And then the other thing, the other functions tutaziongelea. There are blood vessels that supply the heart with blood. Yeah, and we'll look at that in a few. When we cut the heart cross-sectionally, this is how it looks. This is how the heart looks, the inside of the heart. And as you can see, I really wished my pen was writing. As you can see, the heart is divided into 4 chambers. I don't know if you can see the 4 chambers of the heart. Hiyo tutaongelea kesho. The 4 chambers of the heart. I placed a video here, but we'll look at the video tomorrow. The pathway of blood flow, that one we'll look at tomorrow. Heart muscle contraction and sounds. This is something that we should look at physically, so that we can know how to use a stethoscope. This one we'll slot it for physical session. So let me jump to the lymphatic system. That's just a brief introduction on what the cardiovascular system is. Just a taste of what we are just about to study. The lymphatic system, as you can see, the lymphatic system is just more or less a network of vessels that are connected to nodes and glands. A network of vessels that are connected to nodes and glands. Some of these glands are the spleen, we have the thymus, we have tonsils. And some of these nodes, kunakuanga na some nodes on our groins, kunakuanga na zingine just close to our makwapa, si kwa makwapa, but just close to our makwapa, the armpits. You can see the nodes in blue, the ones closer to the armpits. There are those ones that are just along the groins and all that. So these particular nodes, what they normally do, they're normally filled with fluid, and in them, there are cells that are responsible for immunity, same to tonsils. The cells that are responsible for immunity, there are fluids inside them. These fluids that end up in the lymphatic system, they essentially just come from the blood. So the functions of the lymphatic system is our body's sewage system. As I said, the lymphatic system cleans the body. And one of the things that Maxwell talked about when he was discussing the disorders of the skin, he talked about skin brushing. And he specifically said that in skin brushing, we more or less cleanse our when we brush our skin, either dry ama wet, brushing of the skin stimulates the lymphatic system. And when the lymphatic system is stimulated, then the skin is cleansed, the body is cleansed, and a lot of other healthful stuff happens to your body. So that's number one. The lymphatic system cleans your body from any kind of filth that might be there. And then it maintains fluid levels in our body tissues by removing all fluids that leak out of our blood. You know, at times, there are fluids that might come out of the blood vessels into the outer space, and the lymphatic system is responsible for picking those particular fluids that comes out of the blood vessels. And then we have the third function. The lymphatic system is important for optimal functioning of our general and specific immune responses. And then number 3, the lymph nodes monitor the lymph flowing into them and produces cells and antibodies which protect our body from infection and disease. You've probably heard of elephantiasis. You know, these guys who are beat and then their feet swells. That's the lymphatic system that is affected. And we'll see how this particular condition can be treated. Continuation of the functions, isn't it our chair to msome? The spleen and the thymus are karibu Kevin. You're always our first student to join the class. Kumenyesha.
No, I was traveling now. Ndo nimefika sasa.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's okay. Karibu sana. So we are talking about the cardiovascular system and the lymphatic system. They fall under the circulatory system of our body. And today we'll measure on the blood and anemia. We are yet to get there. So the other function of the lymphatic system, the spleen and the thymus are lymphatic organs that monitor the blood and detect and respond to pathogens and malignant cells. The lymphatic system plays an important role in the absorption of fats from the intestine. Very, very important. Fats are not directly absorbed into the blood once you eat them. I believe we talked about these. Other nutrients, vitu kama glucose, the amasukari, that directly absorbed into the blood. But for fats, it's different. It first gets into the lymphatic system, and through the lymphatic circulation, it gets back to the hepatic circulation. That's the liver. And then we have, when the lymphatic system is not formed well or has been damaged by surgery, radiotherapy, or tissue damage, a swelling of a part of the body may occur. I believe you've heard of conditions like splenomegaly, the swelling of the spleen, or lymphedema, vitu kama elephantiasis. Those are typical cases of lymphoedema. Edema, it's just swelling juu ya tukisema lymphoedema inamaanisha a swelling as a result of the lymph fluid kuja. So when it is not functioning well, the lymphatic system may have a role in obesity, Crohn's disease, and other disorders that we'll talk about. So leo we'll majorly focus on the blood. Some of those things that we've talked about, classic Yanza, we might repeat them tomorrow. So let's talk about the blood. And this is something that everyone at least has seen in the world. It is definitely a fluid, and it is normally suspended form of elements. It's a fluid, and in that fluid, the elements that are suspended in it, that are circulated throughout the heart. The heart is called the cardiac muscle, or the cardium. That's cardium in Latin, and the eligible vessels. That's self-explanatory. So this particular slide here tells us the components of the blood and what pumps the blood throughout our body. In the blood, we are told there is a fluid, and the fluid that is in the blood, we'll see we have water, we have plasma, and then we have elements like glucose. We have elements like proteins. We look at them, and these particular elements are normally transported throughout the system. So I've just, I'll abbreviate what is here. So the blood, as we have said, it is composed of fluid and some elements. And one of the fluids that we find in the blood is a yellowish liquid called plasma. Probably some of you have heard of plasma. And in the blood, we also have billions of cells, very tiny cells. You can't see them with your own eyes. They're very tiny. They can only be seen under a light microscope or an electron microscope. So the vast majority of these cells are majorly red blood cells, and these give blood its color, the red blood cells. So we have billions of cells, and these particular cells that are in the blood, we have three major type of these cells. Tuko na red blood cells, tuko na white blood cells, and then we have platelets. Platelets are very tiny cells. They are in fragments, and they're normally responsible for what we know as blood clotting. There are almost 5 proteins that are responsible for blood clotting in the blood. One of them is platelets. We won't talk about the others. Kuna thrombin, prothrombin, and all those boring stuff. So we have red cells as one of the cells, white cells, and platelets. White cells will further on group them into four cells as we proceed, as we continue with our classes. So this more to this we'll see in our next slides, in our other slides. So hematopoietic system, we want to see how blood is essentially formed. How is blood formed? From whence does blood come? Hematopoietic system. Hematopoietic system inamaanisha the organs that are responsible for the formation of blood. Formation of blood in medicine is called hematopoiesis. So the formation of these particular organs, the spleen, the kidneys, the liver, the bone marrow, the blood, they are more or less responsible in the formation of more blood. Let's talk about blood, for example. When blood, let's say you are involved in an accident, God forbid. Let's say I was traveling somewhere and probably I get involved in an accident. I lose a lot of blood. I'm rushed to an hospital, let's say KNH, and immediately my body, physiologically, my body notices that there is less blood. That will be noticed by the liver. So when my liver notices, there are a series of functions that happens for the liver to notice that there is less blood. So when the liver notices that there is less blood in my system, it will produce some proteins, and the proteins will stimulate the bone marrow to do what? To produce blood. Blood is formed in our bone marrow, to be specific, red bone marrow. And tukiongelea blood, tunaongelea vitu mingi sana, by the way. Tunaongelea red blood cells, tunaongelea white blood cells, plasma, platelets. So the component of the blood that is very, very essential to us is the red blood cells. It is the component of blood that carries oxygen to cells. And you know, when cells do not get adequate oxygen as they require, they begin to die a natural death. And when they begin to die a natural death, you as a person unaanza kukufa tu pole pole. Hivyo. So in the red bone marrow, in the red bone marrow, what the red blood cells are formed. And then in the white bone marrow, is the white bone marrow, the yellowish bone marrow, the plasma is normally formed there. So the liver produces a hormone called hematopoietin. If I'm not wrong, I believe it's hematopoietin that stimulates the bone marrow to form blood. The kidneys helps in regulation, also in formation of blood, the spleen as well, the same. So majorly in infants, in an embryo, mtoto mwenye bado ako kwa tumbo, the spleen is majorly responsible in the formation of blood. The bone marrow does not play any part or role in the formation of blood. Hematopoiesis, as I said, is the formation of blood, and I've explained essentially how all that happens. So all of the cells in the blood, that is the red blood cell, all types of white blood cell, platelets are made in the bone marrow. This happens primarily in the flat bones in your body, such as the skull, the sternum, and the pelvis. Those are the bones in which hizi vitu zinatengenezwa. When we'll be talking about anemia, this information that I'm trying to describe, what I'm talking about here will be very, very essential in helping us manage, diagnose, and treat anemia. Kuna wenye wanakuanga na anemia juu ya the treatments that they're undergoing, let's say chemotherapy or radiotherapy, or there are certain drugs that they're using that are destroying, this particular protein, or that are destroying the cells that are responsible for producing blood in your bone marrow and all that. So this information is very, very critical and important for us to note. Are we together?
Yes.
Is there any question on what we've on what we've discussed so far?
Vitu itaingia polepole, tuendelee.
Okay, and that's for sure true. Ellen White writes that that which is difficult at first, by constant repetition it becomes easy. Vitu huingia polepole. So don't be intimidated by any of these things. We were actually created to understand them fully, no matter your age. We were created to understand how our body works and functions and how we can eat right and live well to maintain a normal balance within our system. So the bone marrow is a highly cellular structure present within the when I say it's highly cellular, what I simply mean is that the bone marrow is full of cells. It is full of cells, and that's what makes treatments like chemotherapy very toxic and very, very toxic and poisonous. You know, chemotherapy, when we'll be talking about cancers, chemotherapy kills all rapidly dividing cells in your body. Rapidly dividing cells are cells, as the name depicts ni cells zenye zina multiply haraka, like zinazaana haraka. And some of these cells, some of them are found in the bone marrow. And cancer is one of those rapidly dividing cells. Na sasa ubaya cancer, in as much as inazaana haikufi. That's what makes cancer bad. Haikufi. It rapidly divides without dying. Cells should naturally die after a given period of time. An example, red blood cells normally die after 3 to 4 months. That's their lifespan. So every cell should die after some time. Lakini cancer cells hazikufi. That's why we have treatments kama chemotherapy that kills all. They're not. It's chemotherapy is not a target treatment. Targetingi the cancer itself. It will kill everything that rapidly divides in your body. That's why you'll find that in most cancer patients, there's normally very less and low blood in their system. Why? Because the organs that are responsible, the cells that are responsible for producing blood and making blood are all destroyed under this menace of a drug, under this poison baptized the name drug. So bone marrow is a highly cellular. If you don't have any option of treatment, it's not a denial of faith doing chemos or radios. If you do not have an option, it's better take poison than die. Okay, the poison will still kill you, but pole at least it will lessen. It will add your days. So those are things that we'll discuss actually tukimaliza training. Some of these things, they're normally very controversial. As medical missionaries, should we now tell our patients not to use drugs and all that? Those particular things are normally very, very we'll discuss them. So hollow cavities, I think you guys should just read these slides, this particular slide on your own. Naona kila kitu hapa nime-explain. So you have the yellow bone marrow and the red bone marrow. The yellow bone marrow is responsible for formation of, can somebody remind us, what does it form? It's responsible for the formation of? Yes?
Fats.
Gershon, you're saying something? Jen said fats. Gershon siku kusikia vizuri. Gershon.
Fatty tissue.
Fatty tissue. Ah, the same thing Jen said. Okay, let's
Platelets.
proceed. Yes, yes, Winnie.
Platelets.
Platelets. Okay, let's proceed. So, the blood cell development. This is one of those things that you really should not bother yourselves knowing. To if you're a curious student, it's definitely okay. There are words that we'll mention here that might be very difficult to grasp, majorly if it's your first time hearing them. But all will be well. All will be well. So the blood cell development. We want to see what happens in the red bone marrow. So all of the cells differentiate or divides from one group of master cells. Master cells, all types of cells in your body. And these particular cells that have the ability of, giving birth to any cell in the body, they're normally called stem cells. So stem cells give birth to any cell that you have in the body. So these stem cells, they take different, we have different types of stem cells depending on what particular cells they form. So the stem cells can become whatever kind of blood cell the body needs. They come under the influence of factors in the environment to become either red cells, white cells, or platelets. Am I audible? Can somebody kindly confirm if I'm audible?
Yes, you are Mwalimu.
You are.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay, let's proceed. So they come under the influence of such factors. So let's say there's a cell called pluripotent stem cell. Pluripotent inamaanisha this is a group of very many cells, a group of very many stem cells that have the potential of, forming daughter stem cells. Pluripotent inamaanisha they form daughter stem cells. And pluripotent stem cells, in this case, we are talking about the cardiovascular system, specifically the blood. The pluripotent stem cells, they form myeloid multipotent stem cells. So the myeloid multipotent stem cells, essentially, this is the, let's say, the family tree of the cells of the blood. Majorly the white, the red blood cells and the platelets. So this is the tree. Kwanzia myeloid. So the myeloid multipotent stem cells was in they give birth to unipotent progenitors. And then these progenitors, they generate all the cells that are in your blood. They generate your white blood cells, and we have 4 types of white blood cells. We have basophils, eosinophils, we have neutrophils, we have monocytes. Majorly, we should talk about all these white blood cells, but tutaziangalia tukisoma immunity. And then we have erythrocytes. Erythrocytes are essentially just the white blood cell, the red blood cells. And then we have thrombocytes. Thrombocytes need 2 platelets. So erythropoietin is more or less just a hormone. I don't know if you discussed it in the endocrine system, but it's a hormone that is responsible for stimulating your liver. Like it's produced by the liver to stimulate, the production of a red blood cell. So that's just the family tree of iso cells. Alafu, the common lymphoid stem cells form 2 lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are the cells that are in your lymphatic fluid. We talked about the lymphatic system. So as we said, the components of the blood, we have plasma, and the plasma is the river in which the blood cells travel. The river in which the blood cells travel. So it carries not only the blood cells, this is quite some good English, but also nutrients. So plasma is the fluid, the river, which in a beba is all these elements. Now, some of these elements that are carried in the blood, kuna sugar, we have amino acids. Amino acids, we said these are the building blocks of proteins. We have fats in your blood. Which kind of fats do we have in the blood? Jen Anganya.
Please repeat the question.
Which type of fat do we have in the blood?
Saturated fat, mwalimu.
No, we don't have saturated fats in the blood.
Triglyceride.
Saturated fat, triglyceride.
Nimechanganyikiwa kidogo mwalimu.
Mwalimu,
I asked you the question, there's some there's a very long text that Jane sent in the group, and ulisema venye ilikurahisishia your understanding. You said you had some nightmare attending classes of arts, and the message was really instrumental to helping you understand further.
We were traumatized.
You're traumatized. So Gershon, we have things like cholesterol in the blood, and their levels are actually impacted by saturated fatty intake.
yes, mwalimu.
Yeah. So kuna vitu kama LDL, cholesterol in the blood, HDL. So if you take a lot of saturated fats, LDL in the blood, itapanda, itakuwa on the rise. So we have fats in the blood. Majorly, the fats that we have are triglycerides. We have the cholesterol, the two types of cholesterol, and other fats that we didn't talk about. Yeah. So we have salts, we have minerals, we have water products, waste products, seawater, vitu kama CO2, lactic acid, urea, etc. And then we have antibodies, some clotting factors in the blood. We have chemical messengers such as hormones. Ulifundishwa hormones are more or less just chemical messengers. And then we have proteins that help in maintaining the fluids at balance. So those are some of the things in the plasma. Yeah. The last sentence in this slide, nitawaachia msome. It's not that necessary. So most of the cells in the blood are red blood cells, as we said initially. These are highly specialized cells that have been stripped of everything, including the nucleus. So red blood cells, this is very, very important knowledge that you need to have. You need to know the shape. Okay, we won't be doing diagnosis and, clinical whatever, but it will just help to your understanding of certain types of anemias that we'll talk about. So you need to know the shape of the red blood cell. Very, very important. So most of the cells in the blood are red blood cells. They're highly specialized cells, and they are stripped. Every cell, almost all cells ziko na nucleus. Nucleus inabeba the genetic making ya hiyo cell. But in red blood cells haina. Mbona? These are some of the questions that might be set in this system. Why does the red blood cell, have no nucleus? So that the surface area, oxygen equal increase. The red blood cells carry oxygen in them. They combine with oxygen. Ama zina siku coagulate, but oxygen normally attaches to them. And so for that surface area of attachment to be increased, there are a few things that, needs to be removed. Vitu kama nucleus should be were stripped off by our loving God and Savior. That might get into the way doing their job, like transporting oxygen. And in the red blood cell, we have something called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a protein, and hemoglobin, hemoglobin has a very high affinity to oxygen and also CO2. It combines with oxygen, it combines with CO2, and that's how oxygen is transported in your system. Juu ya hemoglobin, which is a protein which attracts oxygen. So zina combine na zinakuwa transported. So red blood cells are filled with a special red colored molecule called hemoglobin. It picks up oxygen in areas where oxygen is abundant and releases oxygen in tissues where the oxygen concentration is lowest. That's what hemoglobin does. You need to know hemoglobin juu ni muhimu sana. We've not talked about other other things, other cells. Juu hemoglobin ndio ika important when dealing with anemia. So there are 5 distinct different kind of white blood cells. There are 4 different kinds of white blood cells, not 5. That's in your blood, therefore. Kuna neutrophils, kuna monocytes, kuna eosinophils, kuna basophils. Lymphocytes ziko kwa the lymphatic system. So some have the ability to change with needs and situations in the body. For example, there are different monocytes found in different tissues and different types of lymphocytes with different roles in fighting infection. These cells can leave the bloodstream, sliding out through the vessel walls and attacking invaders at the site of infection. So white blood cells are your body's defense system. In the KDF, administration, police, the Kenya police, in your blood. The neutrophils, the monocytes, the eosinophils, the basophils. Let's say you are probably allergic to something. Let's say you eat something that you're allergic to. When we test your blood, tutaona eosinophils zimeongezeka, tutaona neutrophils zimeongezeka kwa damu. They normally respond to allergies ama rise in histamine levels in your blood. They go for that invader. They attack that particular component that you're allergic to yenye umetumia. They try to engulf or to eat it up to clear your system from it, so that you can become well. So that's what the white blood cell does in our system, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about the immune. It provides immunity. Hiyo tutaongelea vizuri in the future, hopefully. And then tumesema red blood cells essentially are responsible for circulation of oxygen to cells, and it gets CO2 from cells back to the lungs. So we have platelets. Platelets, they are very large. They're large cells. We call them megakaryocyte. Mega kubwa. Caro, it's more or less some protein that stays in the bone marrow after it differentiates and matures from the stem cells. So platelets majorly ni kucoagulate. Si kucoagulate, but inasaidia in clotting of the blood. So some of the health degrading practices that you can do that you can do to yourself, some of the things that affects your cardiovascular health negatively, a lack of inadequate exercise or lack of physical activity ni mbaya sana. Physical activity helps in very many ways. Elisha is normally very passionate about New Start, and I know he taught you well on exercise. And then we have improper diet. Improper diet tutaiongelea, hiyo msijali, nimeandika tu hivyo, but there's a lot to it. There's fats to eat, there's processed foods to eat, the simple carbohydrates. We'll talk about them majorly when talking about diseases. We have temperance, which is merely just lack of abstemiousness. We have ungodly clothing, putting on short-sleeved clothes and not very long skirts, very tight clothing, ungodly clothing. Evans taught that all that quite well. Though he didn't talk about short-sleeved, clothes, which you should actually know. When you expose your arms, you are exposing your nakedness. So inadequate water intake, kuna exposure to poor ventilation, kuna CO. CO ni carbon monoxide, kuna hydrocarbons. So when we expose ourselves to this particular stuff, we suffocate ourselves. And then we have exposure to environmental chemicals and minerals. God calls us to live just as Enoch did. You can go research more on what I've said. To live as Enoch lived. So some of the benefits may just change unhealthful conditions and just change wrong habits. Now utakuwa tu sawa. Are there questions? We'll talk about these ones better. Health degrading practices, because that's the foundation of medical missionary work. Are there any questions?
Niulize.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, why are heart attacks so common nowadays?
We'll talk about that.
Oh,
We'll talk about heart attacks, yeah.
thank you.
Tomorrow we are supposed to talk about the heart. Leo tunaongelea damu. Any other question on what we've discussed so far? There's some slide I'm looking for.
Mwalimu, I have a question.
Yes.
There are certain people who smells bad. Is it because their body smells bad and they are not taking alcohol and they are not even smoking? But you find that these people are just smelling bad. Is it because that the blood is dirty or what? Because
Interesting. So that one we talked about in our integumentary system and the sweat and all that. Can someone give us a reply, a response to that? Any good student who remembers, someone who reads their notes daily?
I think we about blood being dirty. It's one of the causes.
Okay, interesting. So, okay. Okay, blood being dirty. That is true. And the blood being dirty. Let's say you take a lot of fats. At times, I normally try to wrap my mind around the idea of the blood being dirty, and I normally feel like it should always be put to context. Saa zingine watu wanaweza wakakujia wakuambie nipatie dawa ya kusafisha damu, and you at times wonder like what really do you need? Do you need some medication to lower the blood uric acid or the fats in your blood, or the hormones that are in the blood or whatever? So as we said, Gershon, there are some bacteria there are two types of cells on your skin. There's the eccrine, there's the apocrine. And there are specific cells that produce fats and yellowish substances, majorly just underneath your I'm not underneath the armpits, but on just in the armpit, the groin regions. Now, in such areas, there are bacteria that act on these particular fats. So if your blood is dirty, as Pamela's put it, these particular fats, when they're acted upon when they're acted on na hizi bacteria, they'll produce that stench, that smell that we normally feel. So that is just it. And the solution normally is cleaning your colon, brushing your colon really well. That's one of the ways the blood normally is dirtied, very impure and dirty stuff gets diffuses from your colon into your blood, interfering with it altogether. So you need to do that. And then secondly, at times it happens kukiwa na a lot of hormones in your system, in your blood. And one of the things that causes hormonal imbalances, as I believe you were taught last week, actually the major cause of hormonal imbalance ni kutumia mayai sana. Mayai inakuanga imejaa na hormones zote that is able to hatch a hen. So one of the major causes ni hiyo mayai. Ya pili ni maziwa. Maziwa huwa inajaa na a lot of hormones. And then there are several things when these bacteria are interfered with when by the soaps that we use, their normal balance is interfered with, then their function is also interfered with. And those are some of the things that essentially just happens. So begin with cleansing your colon, change your diet, a full plant-based diet. A whole plant-based diet will be very good, and then clean your blood. We'll talk about how we can clean our blood. In our classes, your blood will put the blood being dirty to its very context. What does it mean by the blood being dirty? So that is it. I'll give us 5 minutes and then we'll proceed. So I believe our 5 minutes are over. I think we should proceed. Utanikubalia tu nifike 10. There's actually a lot that I need to cover in 4 days, in 3 classes. If I finish at exactly 8:30, nitakuwa nimemess. And I'll try and make everything simple for everyone to understand. These are one of those favorite quotations of mine. One of the quotations that I endear from the spirit of prophecy. I've been passionate about medical missionary work from around 2019. And that's when I first received this message. And let's read the quotation. Guilt rests upon us as a people who have had much light. And because we have not appreciated or improved the light given upon health reform, we have not appreciated or improved. I think nadhani ningefaa nieke some red on appreciated and improved. Improved is more or less just furthering your knowledge on these on this truth by just reading and trying to understand the much that you can. So through misunderstanding and perverted ideas, there are several perverted ideas actually. Many souls are deceived through misunderstanding and perverted ideas. You know, there's a friend of mine who once confided in me, telling me that kuna venye walifundishwangwa some time back when she reformed. Walikuwa nafundishwa wafai kutumia mafuta wakipika. I really don't know who would teach that. That is devilish. And she stopped. Actually, the whole family, they stopped using oil in their cooking. She stopped taking all animal products, which there's actually no problem with that. And there's only a problem when you stop cooking using fats. And she began losing weight to a point that she became very sickly. And that's how she lost hope on medical missionary work and all that it stands for. Siku hizi anararua mayai na maziwa. At least I managed to talk her out of flesh foods kama samaki. She loved fish. But with a lot of pain and struggle. So there are misunderstanding and perverted ideas, and we really need to understand what the health message is in verity, so that we do not hurt and send souls away from Christ. So those who teach, I believe you guys will be teaching a lot of health and practicing a lot of it. You'll be more or less like pillars, trusted individuals. Mostly, if someone knows that you know what you know, it's normally not important. Knowing something is really not important. What's important is someone knowing that you know what you know. That's what's important. So those who teach the truths to others and who should be shepherds of the flock will be held accountable for their willing ignorance and disregard of nature's laws. So this is not a matter to be trifled with, to be passed off with a jest jokes. Actually, the Bible, I believe it should be in Ephesians. It talks against jesting, joking, trifling jokes. As we approach the close of, it doesn't mean that we should be sad and gloomy Christians. That will also, send away people from Christ, being gloomy and always stone-faced. I'm a victim either way. So as we approach the close of this earth's history, selfishness and violence and crime prevail as in the days of Noah, when the whole world perished in the waters of the flood. As Bible believers, we need to take our position for the righteousness and truth. We are told that medical missionary work is the gospel in practice. Medical missionary work is the right arm of the gospel. It is the gospel of health, and it is very, very important for every child of God to be a medical missionary in different ways. There are many ways we can be medical missionaries. Majorly, when I talk about the history of the health message, I like talking about how it began. Elder Bates, one of our founders, I believe it's Elder Bates, he came to minister. It should be Guinea, back in those days. And, they got an African convert, and the African convert decided to one day just travel to Washington. And she was in some deep distress, in want of, some sort of help from the church. But the church did not have a proper system placed for, helping members who were in need. We are talking about wants here, the physical wants, vitu kama chakula and all that, benevolence. So there was no such thing. And this lady died out of a lack of help. Hangesaidiwa, hakusaidiwa, so she died. She was a new convert. That's when Ellen White actually saw the idea and the importance of, having a means put together, just having a system put in place ya kusaidia watu. That's how medical missionary work began. It began as a work of benevolence. Before the name medical missionary was used, medical missionary, I don't remember the exact year it was used, medical missionary work, but it was some several years after hizi visions za health zilishakuja and all that. So it began, it was formerly known as the work of benevolence. That's medical missionary work. Benevolence ni benefiting others, some helping others. That's how it began. And it began with a very, very good intention. Very, very good intention. And Ellen White says that if we understand the message of Isaiah chapter 58, we'll know deeply what medical missionary work is. We'll know it well. And as medical missionaries, we really need to know all these. And we are told in the same book, Counsels on Health, page 506, tulikuwa tunasoma Counsels of Health, page 505, paragraph 2, in 506, paragraph 1. So we are told that as religious aggression subverts the liberties of our nation, the liberties, the freedom that we have, those who would stand for freedom of conscience, freedom of conscience, just believing in what you believe, arguing out your points according to what you believe or talking about what you believe, will be placed, such people will be placed in unfavorable positions. Like there's a time that is coming when we will not be able to openly preach, when we will not be able to openly go to church and hold our services. Remember vitu kama corona, but corona haikuwa kenye inakuwa described hapa. This is a time when talking about Christ ni illegal. So we are told that in such a time, it's actually coming and very fast. We are told that in such a time, for their own sake, us Christians, for our own sake, we should, while there is opportunity, become intelligent in regards to disease. And when she talks about disease, what does she mention? Anasema we need to know the causes of diseases. We need to know how to prevent these diseases and how we can cure them. And we are told that, and those who do this will find a field of labor anywhere. And actually in the General Conference Bulletin, during a General Conference meeting, she writes that a time is coming when I normally like calling it the unemployment line. Like a time is coming when only medical missionary work will be practiced. This is the time. Ile time yenye hatuwezi openly minister and just preach about Christ openly hivyo, but we'll do it under the disguise of treating patients, treating conditions. And you know, as you treat your patient probably from their homes or from your place, you have the privilege of talking to them about Christ. The government haiwezi kajua kitu kama hiyo. And when this patient is actually recovering, the more you gain their trust, the more you treat them, the more they become well, the more they listen to you, and the better you'll actually minister to them and point them to the man of Calvary. Because we are told that the main object of medical missionary work, Ministry of Healing, page 144, paragraph 1, we are told that we should ever remember that the object of medical missionary work is to point sin-sick men and women to the man of Calvary, who taketh away the sin of the world. That is the main object. God does not need healthy sinners. The main reason why he has given us this particular knowledge of medical missionary work is that we should attend to these particular sin-sick men, and in attending to them, we speak to their hearts. We speak God's word to them, like we minister to them and point them to Christ. You know, that's the main object of medical missionary work. And we are told by beholding him, that's the man in Calvary, that is Christ, these people will become changed into his likeness. Most people we actually handle, most patients we treat are non-Adventist. And if you're probably planning to practice this particular work, most of the people that you'll treat, you'll actually testify to us sometime later, watakuwa Adventist, and they're the ones that watakuwa non-Adventist, and they're the ones that won't really even be skeptical about the dieting that you'll be telling them. Adventists are always very skeptical, ever questioning these things, and we have them in our books. You know, the people that you'll find very easy time treating watu kama hiyo. So just have that in mind. Nilikuwa nimedigress kidogo, but it was a very good digression. So I don't know what to do. I really wanted to talk about anemia, but let's see what we can do. So hizi slides, the objective ni just again looking at the blood physiology ama function of blood. We define anemia, we look at its causes, venye SOP nasema, we look at its signs and symptoms, hivyo ndio tunaweza jua mtu ako na anemia, and then we see how we can treat it, we see how we can manage it, and how we can prevent it. This is a very common condition, and we've talked about blood. Tumeona damu ni nini. Blood is a complex transport medium that performs vital pickup and delivery services for the body. Hizi notes ni zenu nitawatumia. So the functions of the blood are four. Number one, it picks food and oxygen from the digestive and the respiratory system. It picks food from the digestive system. It picks oxygen from the respiratory system, your lungs, and delivers them to cells. We'll talk about this one in detail. There are two particular systems of circulation in our body. We have the pulmonary circulation. That is the movement of blood to the lungs and from the lungs back to the heart. The blood is normally removed from the heart to the lungs. That is blood without oxygen. And then from the heart to the lungs, the blood without oxygen. In the lungs, it will be oxygenated and then taken back to the heart. That is what we call pulmonary circulation. Pulmonary refers to the heart. And then we have systemic circulation, where now this blood is pumped by the left side of your heart to your whole body, to everywhere that is needed. So blood picks up waste from cells for delivery to excretory organs. So blood can become dirty. Why? Because it picks up waste from delivery to excretory organs. Na tutaona hizi wastes ni nini. Hizi wastes tunafaa kuwa tunaelewa. Ndio sasa kama unafanya blood detox, unajua huyu mtu namdetox lactic acid, huyu mtu namdetox damu, huyu mtu namdetox excess protein. Unafaa ujue kenye una detox. ama dawa yenye unapatiana kenye ina detox, but majorly detox za damu tunapatiana an array, several a formulation of herbs that just inatoa uchafu zote zenye ziko kwa damu. So we have, it transports hormones, enzymes, buffers, and various other biochemical substances that are important functions. So it transport hormones, iko na enzymes, iko na buffers, vitu kama sodium bicarbonate is a buffer in the blood, sodium bicarbonate. And then we have various biochemicals. And biochemicals ni vitu kama hormones. So the keystone to heat regulation and mechanism, that's another function of the blood. It regulates heat in the body. So the composition of blood tulishaona, it has a fluid, and the fluid that we saw is in your blood ni plasma. And this plasma is made up of protein clotting factors. It is made up of proteins. It is made up of water and other solids. Solids are things that dissolves in water, things that disappear in water zikimwagwa hapo ndani. So we have ions, we have nutrients. Vitu kama a nutrient like glucose dissolves in water, is a solute. And then we have waste products, gases, and alafu kuna cells. Hizo cells tulishaona. Tuliona there are 3 types of cells: platelets, white blood cells, and red blood cells. And then we talked about erythrocytes, and we need to know how a mature erythrocyte looks like. Erythrocyte tulisema ni red blood cell, and tulisema that they have no nucleus. That's that one we said. Alafu they are biconcave in shape. Angalia venye hizi red blood cells zinaka tam. There's some sweets that I used to eat kitambo nikiwa mtoto sana. They were more or less chewy na zilikuwa zinakaa hivi red. We used to buy them. My mom would say that zinaongeza damu and all that. So they were shaped kama red blood cells. So they do not contain ribosomes. Ribosomes, these are more or less just organelles that are commonly found in cells. Ribosomes are normally responsible for formation of hormones. For formation of hormones, proteins. And then we have mitochondria. Mitochondria is just more or less, we've always said it, it's more or less a machine in a factory. Tunaitanga cells factory. I believe you remember that. Now you remember how we described mitochondria. And then we have the primary component in the red blood cell is hemoglobin. Why is hemoglobin the primary component? Because the primary function of red blood cell is transportation of oxygen. And for oxygen to be transported, it needs to be absorbed attached to hemoglobin. So there are billions of hemoglobin in your red blood cell. It gives the red blood cell its white pigment. So most numerous of the most elements, that is the hemoglobin. Hiyo nitatoa D, sijui mbona niliandika D, but ma'am, it is true. That the red blood cell, it's actually D. That's the 4th point. It is the most numerous, the red blood cells. Tuliona they're in billions. So the functions are those ones. This is a lot. The functions are those ones. Najua other tutors najua wanamalizanga 9:30. You'll just spare me. You'll just spare me. Probably tukifanya digestive system tutamaliza 9:30. If I decide not to put a lot of content in my slides. So kuna red blood cells, the functions. Function number 1, we've talked about transport of 2 things, oxygen and carbon dioxide. Alafu kuna carbonic anhydrase, which is an enzyme in the red blood cells that catalyzes a reaction that joins carbon and dioxide and water to form carbonic acid. This is one of the ways blood maintains homeostasis, balancing. So let's say ama hiyo niache tutaongelea kwa kidney. Let me just close my eyes and think about it real fast. Okay, we'll talk about carbonic acid when talking about the kidney. I really hope we'll talk about it. Yeah, I really hope we'll talk about it. But what we know is that carbonic acid, the levels are normally raised in the blood when your blood is when your blood is acidic, and majorly it when your blood is acidic, and majorly it dissociates to generate bicarbon ions. Ndio nini fanyike, the bicarbon ions inakwanga alkaline, so that the acidity ikuwe reduced, which that's it. And the other function of bicarbonate to turn kwa the digestive system, hapo hivyo kwa duodenum, and also in the urinary system. Bicarbonate is very, very essential in alkalizing our body. And when talking about cancer, we'll see how we can use bicarbonate of soda. There's a natural product inaitwa sodium bicarbonate watu natumia for treatment. So hemoglobin, they're around 200 to 300 million. That's hemoglobins in your red blood cells. Hemoglobin is made up of hizo mtajisomea hizo facts, the hemoglobin, but males wanakwanga na higher amounts of hemoglobin than females. And then blood formation is called erythropoiesis. Hii tumeongelea vizuri, and it normally takes about that number of days, 4 days, for an erythrocyte to fully mature. So when talking about diseases of the red blood cells, there are normally 3 things that are involved. Either the DNA is interfered with, or protein synthesis imekuwa interfered with, or there are disorders that are affecting the cells that reproduces some of these things. So there's an infection, let's say tuberculosis, the bones might interfere with such things. So when we talk about recovery to health, when you have some of these conditions, there are 7 things that you need to do. Number 1, pray to God. Very, very essential, prayer. Ask for his will, ask for healing, vitu kama hizo. Believe and exercise the faith, just believe that the prayer that you've made, your desires, or the desires of your heart, are the same desires and wants for Christ towards you or towards your patient. But then most importantly, God does not work miracles when he has given channels through which treatment can be wrought. So you have to change wrong habits, you have to cleanse the body, and just help the body cleanse itself by using herbs and some simple water treatments. And then you continue in obedience. Obedience here would mean just studying your word, daily praying and exercising faith in God for healing and daily growth into Christ, keeping the natural laws, keeping the physical laws, and daily just giving thanks and exercising a cheerful spirit, and all will be well. We look at all that when talking about anemia. Anemia simply means without blood. An inamaanisha without, emia inamaanisha blood. So anemia is a Latin word that means without blood when we loosely put it. But anemia majorly is defined as deficiency of hemoglobin in the blood. We know what hemoglobin is. So when this hemoglobin is little in your blood, we say you are anemic. And one of the tests that are normally done to know if hemoglobin is less in the blood, we can either do a full blood test, inaitwangwa full hemogram, ama complete blood count, ama complete blood test, and all that. So we'll talk about that as we finish. There's several measurement tests, laboratory tests that can be done. The most common one is the FHG, full hemogram. So some of the causes of anemia, we have too few red blood cells. I don't have to explain that. And then we have, tumeona anemia ni deficiency of hemoglobin. So tunajua hemoglobin inakwanga kwa red blood cells. So kama kuna too few red blood cells inamaanisha kuna too few hemoglobin. Alafu at times there might be too little hemoglobin cells. There might be enough red blood cells, but ndani ya hizi red blood cells, the hemoglobin in these red blood cells ziko kidogo. That one could also be a cause of anemia. And then we have decrease in hematocrit value. That one we'll understand as we proceed. It's more or less just an average of, the red blood cells and the hemoglobin. It's a calculated value between the two. So those particular causes, that's the pathophysiology of anemia. Those are some of the things that might happen mtu apate anemia. We'll put them into further context tuone. So it when those three happens, it normally lowers the ability for your blood to carry oxygen to body tissues. Na kama kuna oxygen inakuwa carried to body tissues, utaanza kusikia tu unachoka haraka ukifanya hata kazi very light work, and so on and so forth. We look at some of the signs and symptoms. So we have 4 major types of anemia. The most common one is blood loss anemia. We'll know what blood loss anemia is. We have aplastic anemia. Aplastic anemia inamaanisha the bone marrow is interfered with. We'll see some of the things that interferes with the health of the bone marrow. And then we have megaloblastic anemia. In megaloblastic, the red blood cells are normally very huge and brittle. They can easily break in megaloblastic, and it's normally due to a lack of folic acid in your folic acid haikui absorbed vizuri, na vitamin B12 pia haikui absorbed vizuri. Hiyo ndio inakuanga major causes za megaloblastic, but we'll look at them further. And then we have hemolytic anemia. Hizi ni the red blood cells zinakuanga very sensitive na zina rupture very easily when they pass through into the capillaries, when the arteries, and what connects arteries and veins are capillaries. And for red blood vessels to pass through the capillaries inakuanga ndogo sana. So the red blood vessels, the red blood cells, they're normally very flexible. They can change in shape. So they always turn very tiny, alafu zinapitia capillaries. Capillaries are very tiny. An example, when you look at your eyelid, na uone some red lines. Hizo red lines ni capillaries, na the redness ni damu iko hapo ndani. So that's how small capillaries are. Na ukiangalia veins ni kubwa sana, hata unawezaona on your skin. So what connects your veins and the arteries ni those tiny minute vessels. So in hemolytic anemia, the red blood cells normally rupture and burst when they try passing through these small arteries. Why? Because they're very brittle and hard. Zimekata change shape. We'll see some of its causes. So those are the 4 major types of anemia. And when treating anemia, which is deficiency of hemoglobin, you need to understand what you're dealing with. What type of anemia am I dealing with? And we'll talk about the causes. When knowing types of anemia, we'll tell you the types of causes. So just stay with me. We have 16 minutes left. Kwa nadhani tutamaliza anemia leo, but haitawezekana. It will be very bad. So the pathophysiology, let me see. The pathophysiology, as I have said, there might be decreased red blood cells or hemoglobin, ama the hematocrit level iko chini pia. And when that happens, there's diminished oxygen carrying capacity ya damu. Like, damu haitaweza kubeba enough oxygen to the various cells. And when that happens, when enough oxygen is not being supplied to various cells, what happens is hypoxia. Hii nitaset hii pathophysiology. What happens is hypoxia. And hypoxia induced effects on the organ function. Hypoxia inamaanishanga lack of oxygen. So tukisema hypoxia to organs, tunasema to lack of oxygen to these particular organs. And what are some of the effects? The cells zinaanza kukufa and so on. So signs and symptoms of anemia zinaanza kushow. So tulisema plastic anemia normally results from destruction of bone marrow. That's number one, destruction of bone marrow. And usually accompanied by decreased number of white blood cells and platelets. Juu white blood cells na platelets zote zinakuwa formed kwa bone marrow. So when your bone marrow is destroyed, inamaanisha white blood cells zitakuwa chini, platelets zitakuwa chini. And what will happen when your white blood cells are down? Your immunity will be interfered with. When you bleed, it will be very difficult for you for the blood to clot. And what are some of the things that might cause ama zenye zinaweza destroy our bone marrow? There are drugs that does that. There are toxin chemicals that does that. NTV just did a discovery, did a documentary on, the toxins that we use in farming and how they affect farmers and in the long term affects us as human beings. We really need to live the life of Enoch. Reiterate that. So the bone marrow destruction by cancer cells. So mtu anaweza kuwa na bone cancer. So bone cancer inaweza destroy the bone marrow. And then we have radiation and chemotherapy, which are cancer treatments. Radiation, tunaweza kuwa exposed to radiation during x-rays and all that as well. And hizo ni some of the things that destroys our bone marrow. Alafu kuna autoimmune disorders such as lupus. Lupus majorly haikuangi common in Africans. Alafu inakuanga genetic. It's majorly found in the Caucasians. But autoimmune disorders zingine zinaweza fanya the bone marrow zikuwe destructed. So when someone has anemia that is as a result of the destruction of the bone marrow, those are some of the causes. So when talking to your patient, you can always know and then talk them out of these things na uone venye unaweza saidia. Megaloblastic anemia nilisema, it normally results as a result of slowed reproduction of erythroblasts in bone marrow. So erythrocytes ama red blood cells are normally formed from erythroblasts. So hizi erythroblasts kama zinakuwa formed kidogo, like kwa kiwango yenye iko very slow, then it becomes a really big problem. So some of the causes are vitamin B12 deficiency. So mtu akiwa na deficiency ya vitamin B12 anaweza kuwa na a type of anemia that is called pernicious anemia. This one I've never handled. I've never seen a patient with pernicious anemia. Probably it's because I've lived in the world for a very short time, but I know from my little experience and from the experience of those who are ahead of me that this particular anemia inakuanga ngumu sana kupata. Pernicious anemia ni ngumu sana kupata. And then we have folic acid deficiency. Majorly, pernicious anemia inaweza kuanga amongst Indians because of their eating. They take a lot of spicy foods which interfere na the digestive system, inaharibu sana the digestive system. So interfere na the gut bacteria that are responsible for fixating vitamin B12 in their system. And for them as vegetarians, they really need their gut to be in the best shape possible ndio wasikuwe na vitamin B12 deficiency. For someone on a plant-based diet, you need your digestive system to be in the best health possible, ndio usikuwe na any deficiency ya vitamin B12. And then we have folic acid deficiency, which is majorly caused by alcoholism or highly refined products. When we were looking at the anatomy of a grain, tuliona the folic acid majorly inapatikana on the bran part of the grain. So when you eat your whole grains, you get the folic acid. And the folic acid is actually responsible for the formation of the heart. It is responsible for the formation of the brain when a child is in the mother's womb during the third trimester, the third month hivi of pregnancy. Folic acid huwa inatumikanga sana in cause hiyo ndio time nini inafanyika, the brain develops the bone marrow to the bone marrow, the spinal cord develop the heart, and it is the most critical phase. So folic acid deficiency inaletwa juu ya alcoholism and majorly highly refined products. We should avoid them. And then we have intrinsic factors that it's normally just called intrinsic factors. So as a result, the red blood cells grow too large with very odd shapes and are called megaloblast. Megalo inamaanisha kubwa. And then we have blood loss anemia. Let's proceed tomorrow. I really feel tired. Let's proceed tomorrow from here. I really didn't want to leave all this. Lakini tabidi. So let's proceed tomorrow. You'll allow me pick one or two questions if there is any, and then we'll call it a night. Anyone with a question?
Mwalimu, so the tuition is constantly.
Yes. You're breaking.
This question.
I can't get you quite well. Sijui kama mnamsikia.
I have a question to ask.